Welcome to Elected, a podcast for women in Canadian politics and our active accomplices. I'm your host, Sarah Elder, and today I have an extraordinary guest joining me from Canada, but we'll talk about the cross-border connection. So Amanda Hinkle, and we'll just dive immediately into this. But first, Amanda, thank you so much for making the time to chat with me today because I'm so excited for everyone to hear our conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you are living in Canada, but you're from the States, and which, just, to like tease this out, what state is like, kind of in the news right now and has a really important political connection to maybe a place you went to school?
Well, I can tell you that I went to high school in two different states that are both a hot topic right now.
Okay.
Part of my high school was in Michigan, where I went to ninth and 10th grade. And in the middle of 10th grade, in 1996-97, that school year, I moved to Mankato, Minnesota. And that first semester of school, the winter of 97, I had Mr. Tim Walz as my global geography teacher. And, I was the new kid. I was trying to make friends. And so I grew up doing theater. And so I auditioned for the school play. And Mrs. Gwen Walz, was in that audition. And she recruited me to join the speech team. And I later went on to have her as in lots of different classes, and both of them have just been amazing teachers and mentors to me in various ways.
That's incredible. And so now, I mean, to have a teacher who goes on to be the governor of Minnesota is, already cool and special and not very common. But to now have that same teacher now be running to be hopefully the next vice president of the United States. When you heard that Kamala Harris had chosen Tim Walz, your former teacher, to be her running mate, like, what was your reaction?
I mean, I had heard about the short list, and the other candidates were just incredible as well. And I don't know, just all of us students, there's just something in us that we all know. We know him so well. We know him to be such an honest, loving, caring um, person, decent human being. Like, he's just never been what you think of as a typical politician at all. Um, and when we all heard that this was real, it was just incredible. I mean, I think that maybe for the first week or so, I was like, I'm getting down to business. I am connecting with students. I am figuring out what this means for us students and how we can get involved and help push this all the way. But there's been moments where it just hits you and you just start sobbing. You're just like, oh my God, like, the whole world is watching. The whole world now knows about this tiny town, about this very special community, and about our lives. And it's been a real honor to try and help share that story and that impact and all of their years of teaching at West, between Mr. and Mrs. Walz and her work, where she went on to work for the district and really try to elevate curriculum for all students. They're both just huge champions for the arts education. It means so much to me as a theater educator and as a person who's in the classroom a lot, and really got to have that experience as a kid of being in an inclusive classroom where your teacher says, listen, this classroom is for everyone. All of our opinions in this classroom are valued. And we're going to talk about how to respect those opinions and how to have difficult conversations. And that happened in Gwen's class and in Tim's class. And I'm so grateful that what I've learned in both of those classes, with Mrs. Walz doing English and American literature and learning how to use my voice in speech and through improvisation and storytelling, to connect, and to be able to empathize and relate to one another, and all of the incredible social justice issues, global issues that I learned in Mr. Walz's class. I feel like I'm really combining those two things in my career. Um, and I was so grateful to be able to attend the DNC in Chicago and get to thank them for all that they've done for us and what they're going to do for America.
Well, and I mean, so the impact that they've, that you've spoke about, and I think it's clear on so many of your classmates that had them as teachers. How will that impact, like, you know, what would the impact on Americans be, on American kids specifically, maybe, if, if the election goes the way I hope it does, and Kamala Harris becomes the next president, and Tim Walz becomes the next vice president of the United States. Um, you know, what do you think that means for the kids of America?
Oh my God, there's nothing more I want than for kids in America to feel seen. All of them, all of them to feel seen and to be able to go to school, and feel safety and creativity and be able to reach their absolute highest potential. And I know that that will happen with Harris and Walz. That they've talked about a lot of different ideas. Mr. Walz in Minnesota has passed free breakfast and lunch for all students. There are policies like that he's been able to get done, like putting tampons in all the bathrooms, which all of us menstruating people know, um, can be life changing. And so I'm so happy that he's making spaces safer for all kids to learn. I also, I'm from a family of teachers. There's teachers in my life too, and so education is super important to me. But when I hear about book banning and I hear about wanting to change history, America can't learn from its mistakes if teachers can't teach about it. And we know that with Harris and Walz, that won't be the case, right? Like they will ensure that our education is prioritized. Project 2025 talks about dismantling the Department of Education as we know it, which is very frightening. So I feel that if you believe in the future of our kids, you have to vote Harris Walz.
Well, and I mean, the impact that, you experienced as a student, and you saw the impact on the lives of others when you were a student. And I think most people will have at least heard that Mr. Walz was involved with starting the first gay straight alliance at your high school. Um, and you are friends and connected with the student, I believe, who led the initiative, who is now a lawyer, an advocate for LGBTQ rights, which is just, amazing. But what was that experience like being a student? Because, I actually don't even know when I graduated high school in 2001. I don't even know if my school had a gay straight alliance. So like in the late 90s, early 2000s, that wasn't common, or
Yeah,
at least where I grew up, it wasn't.
yeah. So in Mankato, Minnesota, I moved around a lot before I moved there. I was born in Chicago. I've lived in a lot of big cities. I've been really lucky, to have friends, a lot of different varieties of kinds of friends that don't necessarily look like me or believe the same things as me. And so by the time I got to Minnesota, um, I, you know, like I said, I was in theater. And so a lot of Jake, who we're talking about, Jake Rayton, the founder of the Gay Straight Alliance, was a dear friend of mine and also very involved in theater. And yeah, as soon as Kamala Harris said, it was introducing Mr. Walz as her running mate and said, he's he was a coach of the football team, but also helped start the Gay Straight Alliance. That's when it got really personal really quick. Because I was there. I was there when bullying happened. I was there when poor Jake, has had like his driveway of his parents' house chalked with horrible hate speech. Um, I'm right by his side when we started the first Human Rights Week, Anti-Oppression Week, it was called at the time. Like I said, when this first was announced and it got personal really quick, and people kept saying, listen, like, you got to what tell me more about this Gay Straight Alliance. What was this? When did it happen? And one of my friends called me up and said, listen, I know you were there. I said, this was 25 years ago. I know we were all friends. Like, I know that we had these really supportive teachers, but I luckily had one journal from high school in my basement here in Canada. And I quick opened it up. I'm scouring for, trying to track, like, when did the Gay Straight Alliance start? When did Jake come out? What happened? And what I discovered is that spring, like I said, of my senior year, this would be spring 99, is when we had the Human Rights Week. And I had written in my journal that, I had gone over to Jake's house and I helped him make this big banner for the week. And I put my artistic touch on it. And, we were all excited. And then, like, a couple of days later, I'm also writing in my journal, today was Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember. And today was Gay Awareness Day. And 150 kids in our school threatened to walk out. And they were tearing down signs about gay tolerance. And it was really scary. Like, it just wasn't, it was very new. I mean, it's not new, right? It's been around since the beginning of time, but people were starting to talk about it. Gay marriage wasn't passed yet. There was a lot of just new thinking about this. So it was certainly a time. And they did start the Gay Straight Alliance the fall of 99. So I was in my freshman year of college at that point, and I came back a lot, right? Because that's when the football team went to state. It was so exciting. And the Gay Straight Alliance was starting. So I was coming to visit my friends and cheer them on. So that's probably why they remember me there, even though I wasn't actually there.
Well, and Jake spoke at the DNC at the convention.
Yes. Yeah. He was on the big screen with a bunch of our other students talking about that. It was so great to be there with everyone from so many different years that the Walz talks. I was friends with kids from different grades. So yeah, it was so great to be together and really cheer on Mr. Walz.
I mean, so I think a lot has been said about, the kinds of the actions, like the things that they did. And, I think it says a lot about who they are as people. Um, how do, why, and I think they sometimes it might actually seem to be too good to be true. Like, how can two individuals be so kind-hearted and caring and empathetic and inclusive? But honestly, it's everything. Hearing about them, it's everything that it's like the teachers I want for everyone. And you were lucky enough to have them.
Yeah, I feel that way too. I honestly, I hope that other people have had teachers like them in their lives.
Mm.
Um, I really wish that for everyone. And I think that that's why a lot of Americans, I mean, people around the world, are so excited about them because they see teachers they had in them. And they're like, the possibilities are there. And truly, you can never underestimate a public school teacher. Absolutely
Mm.
not. They and so many other incredible leaders come from a teaching background. And I don't know. I know from being in Mr. Walz's class, um, he's able to hold space for like multiple points of view. And I feel like when he was running for Congress in Minnesota, when he left teaching, that story, right? When he left why he left
No,
teaching.
no, please share.
So he, he in his classroom, he would have lined around the walls of his room were always like bumper stickers from every candidate running in every local race, just so that the names were familiar to us and that we could kind of see, okay, there's a lot of what are the different kinds of jobs and in service to the community, and what are those policies that these candidates might think about, and where do I fall with my values.
Hmm.
That kind of reminder was just always there. um, and now I've lost my train of thought.
About leaving teaching to go into
Yeah,
politics
leaving
for
teaching. Yeah.
Congress.
So
Yes.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that he really embraced understanding all points of view and making informed decisions.
Hmm.
um, And yeah, so from what I gathered, he had a group of students and was going to was going to a Bush to hear Bush speak, I believe. And one of his students had a Kerry pin on their clothing, and they were turned away. And he just could not believe that he had organized this group of students to come and to truly hear a leader speak and to be able to form their own opinions and participate in democracy, and they were turned away. Um,
Wow.
and because they didn't look, I guess, like the people, or they're wearing a pin at least that they disagreed with, and so they were turned away. And so at that moment, his students really encouraged him and said, "Listen, Mr. Walz, you can do something about this to change this." And he took that seriously, and he did. He left teaching to pursue running for Congress. And like I said, in Minnesota, where we lived, it's quite Republican. And there's a lot of farming community around us. And because I think Mr. Walz grew up in Nebraska in a farming community, he's able to communicate with those folks and truly build relationships that work, and policies that work for them and with them, and to find a way forward. And he flipped that district red. And he was in Congress for 12 years before he decided to leave Congress and run to be the governor of Minnesota. And even in the short time he's been governor, he's gotten so much passed, so much done,
Yeah.
and made Minnesota truly the best place to raise a family in America.
Well, and from what I've heard and, what you've shared and so much about his messages, I think, you can hold space for people who have different opinions, right? And I think even the campaign is trying to, Kamala Harris has said, um, people are going to vote different ways, right? But those people are still your neighbors. They're still in your community. They're still, part of your life. And, the times are really fraught and things are frankly really difficult and people have very strong feelings. But I think the message, at least from what, holding space for, people who have different opinions for you, like this is getting lost in our society. um, and, that's something that, and I think that's in part why, in, from my observer outsider status is, um, how someone could go and turn, a Republican area Democrat, right, is by not denigrating anybody, but just like coming in with a message, right, and knowing how to talk to people.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. I think that
and
he can also relate to them too, right? Can say like,
yeah,
"Oh, I know where you're coming from," or "Tell me more about that. Like, I don't
yeah,
understand." He's just always been the kind of person that will take the time to really understand what's going on,
yeah.
and find a way forward.
Well, and so on the point of finding a way forward, there's so many things that are at stake right now. Um, and, something that if Donald Trump gets reelected, there's a possibility that he would have the opportunity to appoint more justices to the United States Supreme Court, which would further entrench a conservative majority and would further entrench possibly, you know, really would Roe's already been overturned with the Dobbs decision, it would continue to take America in a direction that, a good, if not 50%, more than 50% of the population does not want to go in, right? They don't want to go back to that time in history. And there's just so much at stake. Like, how do you, when you think about the election is coming this Tuesday night, like, how are you preparing yourself for this? Because there's, there's just so much at stake.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm just keeping busy.
Yeah.
And I keep trying to get out the vote, right? Like I'm part of an alumni network of Mankato West alumni, and we have actually are now partnering too with the Alliance High School former Tim and Gwen Walz students from Nebraska. They've reached out to us too. So it's been really amazing to help amplify those stories from all over the country, all over the world, helping people understand why they're voting the way they're voting, what are the values, what are the reasons, what's at stake. There's been groups of us phone banking. There are groups of students door knocking around the country in swing states. There's been a massive postcarding effort that's been going on. One of my friends just opened an art studio in Minneapolis right before Mr. Walz was announced. She's been hosting watercolor postcard
Hmm.
making classes like at her art studio, which is incredible that like all these alums and their families and friends and anyone that just really believes in this campaign has been coming out to support that. And they've sent, I want to say 8,000 postcards.
Wow.
Yeah, it's substantial. So there's a lot of ways to help. And for me, that's I've been attending Democrats Abroad events here in Canada, connecting with other Americans here, telling them about my experience with Mr. Walz and Mrs. Walz, and also, the policies and what Kamala is going to mean for America and why their vote is so important to vote from abroad as well. And so I think that yeah, for me, it's just keeping my head down and like Mr. Walsh has said, we'll sleep when we're dead. It's that important.
What are your plans for election night?
Great question. I have the theater company I work for in New York City actually is going to be in Philadelphia that day. They are helping get out the vote, and I mean the vote is out, but they'll be helping kind of make sure people waiting in line are entertained and are given um, accurate voting information. And so I'll be kind of standing by trying to amplify those messages and that kind of communication in terms of like what my theater company is doing. But I guess, I'm sure all of us alum are going to be texting and it's going to be very exciting. I don't know yet. I don't know exact. I'll probably be with Democrats abroad. Um, I bet.
Well, if you were in Calgary, I would invite you because we're going to actually have an election night watching party at a local pizza restaurant. Unfortunately, you're not in Calgary, so but unless you want to, make a quick trip out. But there's so many people. I mean, I'm so happy you're getting the chance to vote for him in this election and that I think we've all maybe hopefully thought about teachers that impacted us. Um, and, you know, they give me such a sense of hope for the future of America. Um, and I'm just really, really hoping um, that they end up in the White House so that they can continue to change people's lives for the better.
I do too. I know too that Mr. Walls is a hunter and a gun owner. So, Kamala is a gun owner as well. And I just feel like their common sense gun laws are a game changer. I can't express that enough. Of the kids need to be able, kids and teachers and administration, everyone in that building, all of the buildings need to be able to learn and teach and grow in a safe space. And that is just uncalled for that this keeps happening in the United States. And I know that this ticket will protect those families and those kids. It's just so important. We all have
Well,
to do everything we can.
yeah. And it's not just the top of the ticket, but also down ballot races, because without a U.S. House of Representatives that's also a Democratic majority as well as a Senate, you know, if those two houses don't, if the Congress, isn't supportive of a Vice President or President Harris, Vice President Walz, it's going to be really difficult, unfortunately, to make schools the places they should be, which is free from violence, free from hate, intimidation. Um, Kids shouldn't be going to school, to your point, thinking about, how they hide from a school shooter. You can't learn on an empty stomach. Like, all of these different pieces, right, are just so critical, to the success of, little bodies growing up to be, healthy and strong and intelligent and strong-willed and independent. There's just so much at stake.
Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, we there's the environment too. Um, Climate change is coming. It is here, and it's been really interesting living in Canada, and experiencing the differences about just composting. Number one, everyone here composts is just absolutely 1,000% normal and part of. Um, I don't even know what department it is here, sanitation. But it's yeah, I think that America has a lot to learn. I mean, Canada's too. I mean, the whole world has a lot to learn and can do better. And I am a big person that it cares a lot about the environment, and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of things that Kamala believes about fracking specifically. Um, but I'm still voting for her. There are a million other reasons why I want to vote for her, and I did vote for her yesterday. I sent my mail-in ballot express yesterday. Um, but I think that that's important to keep in mind too. It's like that, and Mr. Walz and Kamala have said, like, no candidate is perfect,
Yeah.
and they're going to make mistakes. And so I feel like the choice is so clear. It's about kindness, it's about empathy, it's about respect for all people, it's about our democracy versus going backwards.
Yeah.
And what happened on January 6th and the things that Trump put in place that people have died from, are still suffering from, about reproductive rights and what limitations and dangerous, very dangerous and violent situations women and menstruating people and people dealing with reproductive health are put in, is absolutely disrespectful to them, and just cannot continue. That's just, we can't go back.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm so excited that you got to cast your ballot. And, we're so much of the world is going to be watching um, on Tuesday, and, hoping that, your teacher ends up in the White House.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, I really want to thank you for chatting with me, and keep up your GOTV, your Get Out the Vote efforts. And I'm really hoping I'm yeah, we're I'm hoping that we both get the result that I think is going to take America in the most positive way forward.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thanks.